Hey everyone and welcome back. Today's video is going to be a TBR, a video that I don't think I've ever filmed before. I think I filmed one. Not too sure. If I have, I'll link it up here. But I spoke about this in my reading goals video, that I wanted to make sure that I was actually reading the books that were sort of making me hit my goals, because there's a reason why I set them. Obviously it's not completely prescriptive, but I kind of think that I need to have a TBR and pick from those books so that I'm making sure I'm hitting those goals and then that I'm reading those books. So with that in mind, I've created a TBR. I was going to create a TBR for all the way up until December, but I don't know that these books will take me up until December. So what I've done is also added in some other books that I will be able to dip in and out of, which I hope will then take me until December. I actually hope to buy a couple more books, but for now this is what I bought with the money that I have. So there might be other books popping up. I'm going to list on the screen here, or here, I don't know, my reading goals, and down below, just so you know sort of why these books are being chosen. Also, I have recently come across the August In Africa Read-A-Thon. I will put down the two posts down below because for the life of me now I cannot remember. I don't think a lot of my books fit the Read-A-Thon, but I might slightly try and cheat because I feel like only 2 of them fit the Readathon, but we'll see. The reason why I don't think these books fit into the August In Africa Read-A-Thon is because I think the authors that you're reading need to be like, you know, born in Africa and not diaspora, and I think a couple of the authors that I'm going to speak about are diaspora, so I don't know, but we'll see. So I will be participating in that readathon, and I'm also going to try and participate in the POC readathon, but I will do a different TBR for that, because looking at the prompts I just need to find some books in my collection that either fit that or buy some books that fit that. So look out for that video. But anyway, let's get started with this video. This is a poetry collection, The Republican Motherhood by Liz Berry, and this fits my 5th goal, which I swapped out from to read a fantasy book to read at least one poetry collection a month. And in the month of August I have read this, or I've already read it, so this is like helping me meet that goal, obviously. This is a poetry collection dealing with motherhood. It deals with like postpartum depression, I know, the newborn, the love that you feel for your newborn. It's quite dark, it's very metaphorical. It's a very wonderful collection, and I have already talked about this in my August mid-month wrap-up, so I will link that and you can see my thoughts on that. The next book that I'm going to be reading as part of my TBR for the month of, I guess, what, September through to December, is Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. She is a Nigerian author, so she would definitely count as someone for the August in Africa. So this is a book that's set in Nigeria about our 15-year-old protagonist. Her name is Kambili. Seems to live a very nice life, and then there's a military coup in Nigeria and she is sent to live somewhere else, and there she discovers life and love and a terrible bruising secret deep within her family. I'd be interested to know whether I'd actually like this book. Obviously I'm going to read it because it's part of my goals, but I hum and heart about books that I just feel like don't have a huge plot that draws me in, other than the fact that I've, you know, read some of her novels. I think I've read 2 books by her. I'm sure I've read Americana and Half of a Yellow Sun. So other than the fact that I know I like her previous novels, like nothing about this jumps out to me that I think I should definitely read this, but we'll see. The next book I'm going to read is The Fisherman by Chigozie. Obioma. He won the Man Booker Prize in 2015. This is another book that's set in Nigeria. Again, I don't know if he is diaspora, so would this count? I'm not sure, but I will double check. But I like the sound of this book. I really like the sound of this book, and I think it might be the book I pick up next. In a small town in western Nigeria, 4 young brothers, the youngest is 9, the oldest 15, use their strict father's absence from home to go fishing at a forbidden local river. They encounter a dangerous local madman who predicts that the oldest brother will be killed by another. This prophecy breaks their strong bond and unleashes a tragic chain of events of almost mythic proportions. I love the sound of this. I love books that deal with that sort of prophecy. It reminds me of, there's another book and I'm trying to remember it, but I read it at the end, like towards the end of last year, and again it deals with the fact that they find out their life, like they go to see a psychic or someone who tells them basically all the details of their life, and no, sorry, she tells them when they will die, and it's sort of about how their life unravels then. I love the sound of books like this just because I think it makes you question what your life really is, what your life is about. If you know when you're going to die, does that change the sort of things that you do? And like obviously this is a bit more of a mystery because who ends up killing that brother and why, so this sounds brilliant. The next book I'm going to speak about is My Sister the Serial Killer, and this was longlisted for the Man Booker and shortlisted for the Women's Prize. And I'm very surprised on both parts, if I'm very, very honest. I spoke about this in my July wrap-up that I did, and I listened to the audiobook version of this and I really, really enjoyed it, but if I had read the book, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. This book is narrated to us by an older sister who I can't even remember her name, and I feel like she's obviously the main character or the other main character, but she narrates about her life and her sister's life, Ayola, and basically her sister keeps killing her boyfriends. I think this is probably the third boyfriend she's killed or something like that, and obviously we're reading this book trying to figure out why, the sister is trying to figure out why. While she's doing this, she's recounting their childhood and then also recounting what is happening in the present time. There's a really good, like, nice twist in this book in the sense of who the sister confides in and what ends up happening when she confides in this person. But overall, the story didn't go anywhere. The characters didn't develop. From the characters just literally went on a journey from A to B, or maybe they went from A to Z and they stayed completely the same. No one developed anything. They didn't develop in any way, shape or form, and it was so frustrating. But that was a book that I had as part of this TBR, that I bought as part of this TBR, but I've already read it. But the author is Nigerian. I should really check this out before I start doing these, shouldn't I? But for sure the book is set in Nigeria, so I thought that was great because at least in the audiobook it's narrated by someone with a Nigerian accent, so that makes it brilliant. The next book I'm going to speak about, all novellas really, is the Binti Trilogy. So far I've read 2 in the trilogy and I have not been enjoying it, but I picked them up because they were recommended as a good way of obviously meeting my goals of reading books like by African authors, although this would not count for the Africa in August because she's definitely I'm sure she was born in Nigeria and now she lives in the US, so I think she would count. But recommended to me because it's sci-fi, it's a bit of fantasy, and obviously it carries the African theme. It's essentially they're writing about sort of a science fiction world that is based in Africa. I'm pretty sure it's very specific and it is based in Nigeria as well. I could be wrong. And the Binti Trilogy is basically focused on this one girl named Binti, and in the first novella she travels on this spaceship thing to this new sort of university. An incident happens, it's all very wild, and she is allowed to continue going to school. Baffled. Again, this is something I'm going to talk about in my July wrap up, so I don't want to talk about it too much now. And in the second book she returns back home with a guest, and it's sort of about the exploration of what it's like when she returns home and how her parents feel and how her friends and family feel, because she sort of disgraced them, she's disregarded traditions, and obviously traditions are something that's very, very important in like African society. But it's also very interesting because the author has taken what I assume is like, I guess, sort of tribal traditions and rituals, and sort of weave that into her story as well. So it's interesting reading about those, but honestly I feel like the novellas are a hot mess. So I have picked those up as part of my way of meeting those goals. Haven't read the third one yet, on its way. The next book I'm going to put on my TBR is this book, which is Seed to Harvest by Octavia E. Butler. This is actually a collection of 4 books, so it contains the novels Wild Seed, Mind of My Mind, Clay's Ark and Passion Master. This was actually recommended to me, and my boyfriend is also a huge sci-fi fan, so he had this on his shelf, and this sounds amazing. This obviously fits my goal of reading more sci-fi, but also reading books like set in Africa or by African authors, because I think a lot of her stuff is set in Africa. She's an African American author. This book says, what it says on the back is so stunning to me. It says, these 4 novels take readers on a wondrous odyssey from a mythic primordial past to a fantastic far future. In ancient Africa, a female demigod of nurture and fertility mates with a powerful destructive male entity. Together they birth a race of madmen, visionaries and psychics who cling to civilization's margins and back alleys for millennia. coming together in a telepathic pattern just as Earth is consumed by a cosmic invasion. Now, these new beginnings, no longer merely human, will battle to rule the transfigured world. How brilliant does that sound? I am so ready to get stuck into this book. Like, between that and The Fisherman, I don't know what I'm going to pick up first, but I love that sort of mystery element of just something that I don't see happening. These sound really good, but I also wonder which one it's actually referring to as there are 4 novels in this book, unless these 4 were obviously all meant to be part of one series. I don't know, but I'm definitely looking forward to reading this. The next book I'm going to speak about is Slay in Your Lane, and these 2 ladies, Yomi Adegoke and Elizabeth Uviebinené, are both of Nigerian descent, so I'm counting this as some books written by African authors. It's not set in Africa. This is a collection of, I think, interviews maybe of women across, I want to say the UK, but it might be London specific, who I guess are at the top of their career, and they've interviewed them and sort of put together this Black Girl's Bible of how to get ahead. It says, this honest and provocative book recognises and celebrates the strides Black women have already made, whilst providing practical advice for those who want to do the same and forge a better visible future. I love the sound of this. It's got interviews and then it's got pictures of the people that they have interviewed, and it's just really nice. It's also really nice to obviously have a book that's quite UK focused and specific, because although you can read about people's journey everywhere, obviously it's really nice if you're actually in the UK and you want to sort of go along the same path, you know, sort of the similar things that you need to do. So still continuing along that theme of sort of Africa, etc, etc, this is actually a proof copy of a book. I don't think I have showed it in a haul yet. I can't remember what it's called actually. It's called The Kingdom of Souls by Rena, Barron, and it's just on the spine here. I've had a couple of people talk about this book, and when I heard them talk about it, I thought that book sounds awesome. But I kept thinking in the back of my head, you've heard about this book before, and it's because I have a proof copy of it, and I'm just like, okay. I got this proof copy just through a work event that I went to. But the reason why this book sounds so cool is because it is a fantasy/sci-fi novel that is set in West Africa. So it says, an explosive fantasy set in a West African inspired world of blood, magic and deadly legend, where one girl must sacrifice her life year by year to gain the power she needs to save her people. One of the things that really struck me about this book is in like the inside cover here. The author talks about the fact that she wrote this book because she wanted to see representation in like fantasy, I guess sci-fi books that she could see herself in. And obviously Africa is full of like mythology and legends and storytelling and things like that, so she wrote the book for herself, and she has a whole section here where she talks about it, and I just thought it was really nice. This book is interesting because our main character actually isn't a magical person. Like, I think everyone in her family has magical powers, but she doesn't, and then she ends up basically like buying her magic or something like that. But I think that magic is probably tinged with like bad magic, and I think she's able to sort of foresee what's going to happen in the future, and it's not good things. And I know, yeah, basically says that she has to sell like years of her life, to gain this magic. So I guess it's about her journey and how she does this, and obviously the fact that she needs to save people. She just must sacrifice her life year by year to gain the power she needs to save her people. So she goes from someone of being like someone who's sort of outcast from her family because she shows no magical abilities, to being someone who now has to save all her people. I'm unsure of whether I'll actually like this book. I don't want to say it's because of the fantasy element. The book sounds a bit far-fetched to me, and I just don't like books that sound really far-fetched. I say that as someone who is going to talk about a whole series of books next that sound kind of far-fetched, but I'm on board with it. So I am referring to the Themis Files, and this is a trilogy. I've already read parts 1 and 2, and this is the third one in the trilogy. And it fits my goal of reading sci-fi. Essentially what this trilogy is about is, in the beginning, the first book, a young girl falls into a hand, a huge, massive, I wouldn't say steel, it's not steel. I'm imagining more like stainless steel, but I could be wrong. Many years later, she ends up researching this hand and ends up building a big ass robot, because this hand is part of a body, and this body is a big ass robot. So the first book was absolutely delightful, seeing them piece together this robot bit by bit, and how they found them, and how, you know, you're learning with them what this is, and I think that's very useful, that's very needed, and you just feel like you're going on the journey with them. It's a journey for all of us. We're all learning about this robot. And the second book is more to do about finding out where these robots came from. More robots start appearing everywhere. It's a real journey, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the third one as much as the first one. So yes, the Themis Files is a trilogy of 3 books that fits my sci-fi goals, and a book that I'm so happy that I've read. And yeah, obviously this is on my TBR to finish for the rest of the year, but what a trilogy. I say what a trilogy. What a ride it's been so far, even though I haven't finished the trilogy. The next book I'm going to speak about is this, which is Diversity by Sarpong. I'm sure she is of Ghanaian descent. I don't know if she's diaspora. I feel like she maybe is. So again, wouldn't count for the August in Africa, but this is more a book that I'm not too sure that, like, I'm going to get to it at the towards the end of the year. This book is taking a look at diversity within the workplace. So it says here that it's including women, ethnic minorities, those living with disabilities, and the LGBTQ+ community, uncovering the hidden cost of exclusion, how it proves how a new approach to how we learn, live, and do business can solve some of the most stubborn challenges we face. So that's the reason why I'm a bit skeptical about reading this book. Not because I don't think it'll be very interesting, but just because I think it has very like business focus, and whilst I would benefit from reading this book because I do tend to work in very corporate companies and things like that, because I feel like I'm not in positions where I can make change, this book is a bit redundant on me. But I'm going to read it anyway because it's probably going to contain some very insightful things, but it's not a book I'm super excited about getting to. But I'm definitely putting it on my TBR because I don't know, it makes the TBR well-rounded. Another book on my TBR, and this is actually helping to fit in with my essay goal, is White Rage. I'm not really sure if this actually is an essay collection. I think it's really hard to find essay collections. Like, this just seems to be sort of like, it's split into chapters, and it's obviously not a work of fiction where, you know, the story flows from bit to bit, but I don't know. I don't know if it's an essay collection, but it's marketed as an essay collection. I think I heard Mercedes from Mercy's Bookish Musings talking about this book, and this is a book about the, I guess, white rage that it's felt in America every single time it seems that like African Americans make progress for change, and obviously it's not essentially coming from their perspective, it's coming from the view of Carol Anderson, who is observing what she calls white rage, the sort of, I don't know, reactions that come from white people when it seems like there's positive change being made. So it's a very interesting title. But yeah, so this is trying to meet my goal of the essay collection. I don't have a lot of books that meet that essay collection goal. I'm trying to be quite curated with the books that I pick to meet that essay collection goal. But saying that, there is also another book that I picked up while I requested it on NetGalley, and it is called Trick Mirror, and that is definitely an essay collection. The author of this book is actually, I think she's like a writer for the New York Times or something like that, I don't know. I'm subscribed to this mailing list that actually spoke about it, but I'd already requested it by then. But this is an essay collection. It's like reflection on the self. So she's talking about like the internet, feminism, things to do with sex. I think it's a lot of like, I don't know, how we're super focused on ourselves, and maybe like what we see in the mirror isn't actually the most accurate thing. I'm not gonna lie, I don't know the very ins and outs of this essay collection. Essentially she's writing about like the sort of millennial times that we're living in, and maybe how what we're seeing in the mirror isn't actually the most accurate representation, or perhaps what she's saying is what we're seeing around us isn't also the most accurate representation. I don't know, the title is obviously doing its job in the sense that it's called Trick Mirror. Is what you're seeing actually the truth? In terms of my TBR for the goals that I've set, that is it. I need to buy a couple more books to obviously help meet these goals, but I've got enough to keep me going, so I thought I would just set that, and then there are some books in here that will obviously meet the August in Africa Read-A-Thon. But I will try and film a reading vlog for the books that I read for the August in Africa Read-A-Thon, and I'm going to get to those books first because the Readathon takes place from beginning of August until the end of August, and I caught wind of it very late, and I'm now obviously putting this up late. Well, this isn't up late, but I'm obviously now putting this up now, so by the time you watch this, it will be like, I don't know, towards the end of August, but I will definitely do a reading vlog on that. But that is it for this TBR video. Please let me know if you have other books that you would like to recommend me. I will obviously put them in my to read basket, but I already have tons and tons of books that I already like want to purchase. And if you've read any of these books, please share your thoughts with me. I'm just intrigued to know what people think about these books, just to see whether or not I will like them. But yeah, these are the books that I will be planning on reading in the next couple of months. That's not to say there won't be other books that I won't pick up, maybe if I get sort of, I don't know, bored with these books. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but if I get bored with these books. But basically, to encourage me to stay on track, I created a TBR. But anyway, that is it for this video. I will catch you in another one. Thank you for watching. Bye.